Good morning, Jonathan. I'm so happy that we're finally talking again, that this is going to be our first interview. And I'm so happy that we can make it all the way from this little tiny desert town in Mexicali, in Mexico. And you guys are doing like said 6 inches of snow back there. How's it going?
We got about 6 inches of snow up here in the Twin Cities. Got a lot of it yesterday. It was some of the nastiest weather I've seen. But I'm nice and warm in here and happy to be on chatting with you.
Thank you. So I'm so happy that we're doing this because I got to let everybody know that John Miltimore is a managing editor at the Foundation for Economic Education, which I used to read a lot. And that's the main reason that I wanted to get to meet you and talk to you, because I'm a reader of yours. We didn't have any previous background or shared friendship. I'm basically a reader of yours, a follower of your work. And I just want to say a couple of things about you before I ask you to introduce yourself in a more broad sense. So you describe yourself as a writer and editor with experience in newspapers, magazines, and digital media. You call yourself a news junkie, which I bet you are. Also a storyteller, which I can attest to. And a savvy headline writer, which I guess it makes a cut. Your writing has been in the forefront and reporting in Time Magazine, in the Wall Street Journal, CNN, Forbes, Fox News, and the Star Tribune. And you were also an editorial editor at the Intellectual Takeout, which is based in the greater Minneapolis-St. Paul area. And right now, at FEE, or the Foundation for Economic Education, you are responsible for the organization's daily editorial content, which is about 40 articles per week. A lot, reaching nearly 2 million readers per month. Your organization was founded in 1946 by Henry Hazlitt and Leonard Reed, two of the greatest. And FEE is dedicated to the economic, ethical, and legal principles of a free society. So I'm so happy to talk to you, John. Please, there's more to say about your experience, your career, your past. But I just want to start with how would you introduce yourself as Jonathan?
Well, you did a really good job there. That was a very thorough explanation of me and my work. I just call myself really a writer. I've been doing it a long time. I like writing about ideas and stories. I started as a Cub newspaper reporter close to 15 years ago now. And for people who want to become writers, I don't think there's a better job really than being a daily beat writer. I'd already been in grad school at that point. But I tell people I learned a lot more about writing at just working at a newspaper than I did during, college or graduate school. And I think one of the reasons you're required to write every day, and sometimes several times a day, several pieces. And you just kind of learn like the basic structure of articles. You learn how to write a good lead and how to, what makes a good headline, what makes a good story. And for me, I found that, just an incredibly important part of my career.
What I see is that you have a pretty strong background on the humanities. So you have a BA in History and English from the University of Wisconsin, Platteville, but also your MA is in History, and that's striking to me. And I wanted to first ask you, how was it that you chose to go into history at a young age?
It's one of the things I was just introduced to history as a kid, really. It's like one of our family is a bunch of history buffs, and I kind of cultivated that, throughout my life. And it was just kind of a natural fit for me, like I wasn't, like a lot of people, I wasn't sure what I was going to be I just started studying lots of history and lit and philosophy and a little economics because there were issues that there are classes I like taking. And, like, I think, at least for me, people are different. At least for me, if I get interested in something, I can do well and excel at it. If I'm not, I struggle more. If it's sort of like if I'm not interested in that subject, it's hard for me to focus on it. It's hard for me to do the work. And so for me, I just kind of was gravitated towards those areas that I enjoyed the most. And I will say, I'd offer a young person a little different advice. I wasn't thinking about the utility of the degree. I wasn't thinking like, okay, what am I going to do with this once I graduate? Those things didn't really enter my mind. And I do think those are important things to think about, especially when you're taking out, tens of thousands of dollars in loans. In some cases, people are taking out hundreds of thousands of dollars. Kind of think about what you want to do with what you're studying and how it's going to help you get there.
Yeah, are you going to manage to keep a job that you hate just to pay off the debt for so many years? Are you willing to do that? And those pretty important questions that maybe we should help young people to ask themselves, or get them to ask themselves before committing to this kind of long-term burdens that colleges have become in the financial sense. But what was it like, John? Just before going to college, were you a good grade kid? Were you in the honor roll? Did you hate math, or I don't know, what was it like?
That's funny. Yeah, I'll say I was a poor high school student. I got my grades got much better the further I went. But in high school, I wasn't a strong student. There were some classes I did well in. I probably didn't even really want to go to college that much. I wasn't sure what I was going to do. I credit my mother a lot. My mother kind of really prodded me toward college, and I was an athlete. I wrestled in most of my life, and then I went and continued in college, and I was recruited for that, and that made a difference too. I'm not sure I would have went. I'm not sure I could have got in if I didn't have some of those things. Because, like I said, I wasn't. I did do. I did well on my tests, and that makes a difference. I was always a good test taker. Did pretty well on some of those. And it's funny because we joke. I have 3 kids, and we're already finding out my kids are very good in math, and they struggle more in the reading areas. And I was the same way. If you look back at all my, the standardized tests, I always scored very high in math, and my language reading skills were always lower. And the irony is I took a career path that I'm writing and editing and doing and things like that. And I think that does go to show, like, if, you work at, so it might not have been my natural skill set, but that didn't mean I couldn't pursue this and succeed at it.
It's great to know. And it seems to me that it really shows that you chose not to constrain yourself to what just came easy, and went with there were some motivators, some inspiration within yourself to choose something that was even more challenging, in the sense that you had to develop the skills over time. You have to work harder for it. And this is pretty interesting because I think it's really fair to say that you have a way with words. I have my notes that I wrote before our talk, and it says that. It says, I think it's really fair to say you have a way with words, and it's obviously you have to develop them over time and work hard for them. So I wanted to ask you, how was it that you picked up your first job in the editorial world?
I think I'm trying to think my very first job. I think I knew I wanted to work in the space of words and writing for a long time, even before I kind of admitted it to myself. And the secret is, I read a lot of books. I was reading at a young age. My dad is just a voracious reader. And he had to find stuff that kind of, I eventually liked. At first he was giving me books I didn't care for a lot of them, but and I didn't think much of it at the time, but looking back, I'm like, oh yeah, I was reading Tolstoy and Dostoevsky when I was 17. Reading things, and some of it was history, some of it was, economics, some of it was just classical literature. But I think the reading is probably the most important thing that helped me. And so I think after graduate school, I landed an internship in speech writing at the White House, which was a cool thing. It was, a lot of people were like, wow, you're at the White House. And I didn't work on, I wasn't writing speeches for the president. Like a lot of people think you were. I mostly did fact checking and research and supported other, White House and speech writing staff. But that was probably my first actual space, working in writing. And then I got a job at a little think tank that allowed me to write. I just wanted to be doing that. And after doing that for a few years, it was just too slow and kind of boring. I'm like, what else can I do? And that's when I got an internship for reporting through the Institute for Humane Studies. And I realized I have a job and a salary. I didn't want to go. I wanted to make a transition, but I didn't know how. So I just Googled it and said, where can I get a reporting, internship, something like that, where I get paid? And it was through the Institute for Humane Studies. And they had a good program. They had really, great. They had really good economists. They had really good journalists. You went through like a week-long program. Then they placed you at a newspaper somewhere in the country. And that's what happened to me. And it was, I went to the Panama City News Herald, and I got a free condo on the beach that they hooked me up with, which was really cool. I didn't, just a place to stay and make some money. And then I got hired there after that was done. And that kind of was when, at that point, I'm like, okay, I'm working now, and I'm working as a reporter. And I think I was able to just hone my craft a lot doing that, and just learn from other people, that, and learn what I didn't know. I like to tell people there was an old copy editor guy, and his name was Lee, and he smoked cigarettes all the time and could barely talk, but he'd always correct he'd always, on the weekends when I worked, he'd mark up a paper and drop it on my desk, sometimes with a little contempt, like, and he'd show me, and that was very instructive because he'd been working in papers for 30 years. He knew what he was doing, and you don't get that in all places. You go, I've talked to other young writers. And one time, one thing many of them talk of is they write things, but they don't really know why changes were made, or they don't know why something was good or why something was bad. And I've worked in writing programs with young writers myself. And I'm conscious of, I want to help them along. I want them to understand so they learn. And that can be tricky because, we work in an environment where, it's all like, you got to publish a lot. You're after, numbers, and teaching young people how to improve writing is something, it's not easy. And I will say, I don't think I'm like a natural teacher. There's some people that are, right? Like they know how to teach people. I think it's a little bit more of a labor for me, but it's just important for young writers that they know how to improve, that they learn how to recognize good writing, and weaknesses in their own writing, and strengths and things like
that. And you just mentioned something that I wanted to jump into. One of the real things that moved me to reach out to you, even though we hadn't talked before or had any previous acquaintance, is that I'm truly amazed of the productivity and the volume at the same time, high quality articles to publish at fee. And I want to dig into that because I want to learn. And so now you're saying, now you're telling me a little bit about how it came about from your past. But how these days do you manage to be so well informed to be able to do your job as an editor of about 40 articles per week and write your own articles? How do you manage that?
Yeah, good question. And I will say, like, our own content, it ebbs and flows, right? That 40, pieces a week, we were doing that a couple of years ago. We've actually dialed back how much content we're publishing because, we just made a determination, like we don't want to sacrifice quality for quantity. And, we were doing that, but some of the pieces we were doing probably weren't as good as most of the pieces we're publishing now. Some we were republishing from other sister sites and like-minded organizations. And we made just kind of a conscious decision, say, like, we might be, it might mean us publishing less, but we want to do more of our content in-house. We want to develop the ideas and the articles ourselves. And there was some trepidation around that because if there was concern, like if we lower volume, like, well, if we lower volume by 50%, we'll traffic fall. And that hasn't happened. Our numbers are actually, we've improved. We've had the best 6 months we've ever had as far as website traffic. We were pushing 4 million page views there a couple months in a row. And that's good for a small team like us. You realize we're really good at punching above our weight class. I think finding good talent is a big part of it. Finding people that are eager to write, they're eager to promote their work. They know how to write well. They know how to find good articles. That's a lot of it. Because many people want to be writers, they want to be, contributors, but they're probably still not quite ready yet to maybe do it and we try to help them too. We want to encourage people to write and to be part of the liberty movement and to, share important ideas about econ and things like this. But I think the key to growing is finding the people that really aren't just good, but they actually recognize how to produce really good content and are really good at promoting their work and finding themselves, getting themselves exposure on other platforms.
So you have a lot of talent from different places, even from colleges, other think tanks. How did you not just manage? How did you build that capacity? How is it that you guys have excelled for so long at FEE at building teams? I mean, even if they're not in-house, what's your philosophy? What's the principles? Do you have any, methodology? How do you do it?
Yeah, I think part of this, FEE was already around for so many years. That helped. We have a brand that people already, even before I joined FEE, I've been here for about not quite 2.5 years yet, but FEE's been around since the 40s. We published Freeman for all those years, and so many people in the liberty movement know the Freeman, and they love it. They still talk about it. So we have a good reputation, and that helps. We have a really good brand. Beyond just reputation, FEE's philosophy is just beautiful and simple. Anything peaceful is sort of like the tagline of FEE. And it's just remembering, the simple idea that we don't need, coercion. We don't need force. We don't need violence. Promoting peace and trade and things. Those are what make a prosperous society. It's beautiful. It's simple, and that helps. And just trying to communicate those ideas over and over again, and to kind of channel those ideas through our work. It's a really important thing, especially today. There's so much polarization and so much negativity. FEE's brand has always been optimistic, and it's always been, peaceful and encouraging trade and cooperation and things like that. And that was one of the things that attracted me to FEE. It was that its philosophy and brand are so good. And so, I think as a content team, we want to live up to those principles. We want to channel those principles through our work. And one of our strategies is just more and more, we're finding find things that are happening today and kind of relate our principles through these events that are going on. And we've had success doing that. And I think part of the reason is people are so focused on what's going on right now. You kind of have, if you really want to be in the game and part of the discussion, that's one really effective way to do that. We say timeless principles, through timely stories is essentially one of our tactics for reaching.
How is your team like? I mean, not only how big, but how do you build it? Which kind of people do you recruit? How many things do you do in house, out of house? How is it like?
We got a pretty small full-time staff as far as just the content team. The overall as an organization's got dozens of employees. Our full-time content team is about 3 people, and so it's small. We also have other people that work on a part-time basis as fellows, writing fellows, and things like that, who are contributing to the discussion of ideas, who are writing content. But at any given time, like our team is probably about 5 people, and we communicate a lot on channels. We talk about what articles we want to write, what's going on, what's important, and we want to communicate so we're getting the right ideas published and not going off topic. But a lot of it's just putting your head down and kind of going to work, right? And when you have people that want to work, that like to be busy, that like to be part of the discussion, that makes the job a lot easier. I can't imagine doing this if you were trying to do it with people that were kind of, I don't feel good today, I'm not coming in, or who are just at home not working. If you have a small team, you have to be agile. You have to be able to work fast and be productive. There's no room for slackers on a small team. I'm sure the bigger publications can get away with that. They have some people that are really productive, some that aren't. In my experience, when you have a small team, you got to have everybody who's coming to work every day and excited to be there and ready to produce.
Since you mentioned it, just share with me a couple of your favorite productivity apps. What do you like to use when you're working, or which channels do you use for communications?
We're on Slack all day long. That's probably the most. We also use Monday.com as kind of a new organizational channel. And I kind of groaned when we went to Monday because I kind of liked our previous, I think we were using Trello at the time. I'm like, oh, here's another new thing I got to learn. But it is very slick. It's a good way to kind of help us manage, what we're working on. And like most people, I probably got a dozen windows open. You're kind of looking, you're talking to people on a Facebook thread or on Twitter, and you're plugged into screens a lot. I will say that's the only. If I have a downside to the job, it's that. You can get too sucked into screen life, and it's harder to unplug a little bit than it used to be. And I think there's drawbacks to that. Even my own reading, I notice my attention span might be a little shorter. It's harder to stay in the book than it used to be. So I'm kind of retraining myself to make sure I'm doing, reading periodically, not during the workday so much, but in the evenings, getting some time where I'm actually reading words just to get my mind, kind of off of the algorithms and the widgets and stuff.
There's so many things that we can talk about. Just going into the technology stuff, which is fantastic. I got my own favorite apps, and I'm always trying to change and keep updated. But before going into that, I love the piece that you wrote about Elon Musk torching Robert Reich about 2 months ago, regarding, this Twitter fight they had, and I just wanted to comment on that. But there's a bigger lesson. There's a real lesson behind the infighting and behind the cruel words. I have here the title was Elon Musk's response to Robert Reich over the modern day rubber barrel claim. How did you choose to write about that? I like it. I loved it. But how did you choose to do that? and take it to an audience that's beyond maybe your personal likings, or you don't know how audiences are going to react to that.
Yeah, I'll be honest. I don't remember where I first saw that. I don't remember. Maybe somebody dropped it on the channel. Maybe I just saw it on Twitter. But right when I saw that, like, it doesn't happen often, but sometimes you just see something and you say, oh, that's going to be a good article for us. And we had done enough stuff on Elon Musk already. Like our audience likes Elon, and we like Elon. Like, there's a lot of people complain, like, oh, he took government subsidies and things. That's a whole nother discussion. The fact is, Elon is a visionary entrepreneur. He's been right about so much of the lockdown consequences. He's been outspoken. He's bold. Like I said in the article, he's like a real life Tony Stark. He's just sort of larger than life figure. And we kind of need heroes today. Like, there's just not enough people that we look through that kind of, Jordan Peterson. I'm working on something like Jordan Peterson right now. And it occurred to me how much we need him. He's speaking to an audience right now that really needs him. Just to go back to Elon, it's kind of the same thing. We need these people that can kind of help, champion our ideas when they're right on so much. He put Robert Reich down, like, very effectively. And it was kind of fun to see. And Tesla stock has been amazing, and that's good for Tesla workers. Like, that's not something to grumble about. We should be celebrating that. But instead, there's too many people of, the Robert Reich persuasion who always looked at, labor and capital are in this sort of constant conflict. And I think that's just flawed thinking. And when you see an example of that, a sparkling example like that Elon makes, in a tweet, it was a fun piece and it did well. I'm still waiting for Elon Musk to tweet one of the articles that we do on him.
Yeah, he should, definitely.
He should. So that's my hope. You never know. It'll happen eventually.
And you're pretty right. We need more heroes now, not just in the US or any industry, just overall. And we really need entrepreneurs to step up. And contrary to what they've been doing lately, which is spouting leftist talking points, maybe they should just learn a little bit about their own business and how economics works beyond their own company, and talk more about the free market and free trade, and go against this collectivist, protectionist ideas that seem to permeate even into the entrepreneurship world, which is pretty sad. And you were mentioning about the content that you guys put out, but also because just you referred to cutting a little bit back on the article count. You guys are doing a lot into video content and more visual content than just the articles. Are you part of that section? Do you have a different branch that manages that?
Are you talking about like pitching media outside of Fee?
I mean the videos.
Oh, gotcha. Yeah, no, we're on different teams, but yeah, we talk every week, and one of the things is we're trying to figure out ways to kind of get more synergy between groups, even, because we have these really different talented teams, but like we kind of focus on our little areas, and we do discuss, and there is collaboration at times. Like sometimes we say, oh, this will work. But it is something we kind of organizationally know there is more opportunity there for that. And actually, I was in Atlanta just a few weeks ago, and we had some good conversations on how do we get some of these talented teams that work together and do some stories that kind of can thread the needle for each group. And we'll continue to do it. Like I think it's kind of tricky sometimes. You have different teams with different ways of they know their product, we know ours, we know, and trying to get everyone on the same page. I will say the good thing was last time it wasn't like leadership saying, "Hey, we kind of need to get teams working together more." This was us saying, "Hey, there might be some things we can do that would be really good opportunities here. Let's get in a room and talk about it." And so I imagine we'll probably see a little bit more of that in 2021.
Yeah, because I mean, if I would have to guess, the video guys will need quality scripts constantly getting pitched to them, and maybe they can embed some of their videos in your articles. So there's a lot of room for synergy in my view in that sense.
Yes, no, I think you're 100% right. And we have a few examples of pieces we thought, well, we know that's going to work, and it's something we can plug that into every article now. This video that's going to get all these. So we the one thing is video is just a very different medium. They producing like one out of frame, for example. I'm sure you've seen Sean Malone's out of frame videos are spectacular, but producing one video takes a few weeks. Like they're long, they're high quality, and our work. We're kind of doing a lot every day, publishing every day versus kind of like one big project. But we do, like to, have articles on those videos. And part of it, that's how I stay up on pop culture through out of frame. I don't get to watch enough stuff today, but Sean's always way ahead of the curve on what hot news shows coming out. And then, taking this show and then finding like the ideas, kind of embedded in that and breaking them down and kind of analyzing them. They're just really good videos. And same with like Rev One, TK Coleman's channel. It's really the Jordan Peterson message, right? It's this message of personal empowerment and how you can control your own life and change your destiny yourself, and not putting your power into other people, other institutions, other ideas. And just finding ways to kind of harness that energy and that vision. Like I will say, like that's one thing our articles. One of my best parts of FEE is that message. And right now, I think there's no single writer that a lot of our content, we have people that kind of get on a beat, right? Like, oh, we know he's going to write about this and she's going to write about that. And, having that person that writes regularly on personal empowerment and those things, that's kind of a voice we'd like to, bring back in. And we might have one young writer who might be able to do that well. We're still looking at kind of some of the things she'll be writing about. But that is just, that's not one of my strengths, right? Like I can look at my strength as a writer. I can't write about that issue with the same passion and knowledge as other people can. And that's just part of like a content team as well, knowing kind of who fits in what space.
John, if you do know this, or did you partake in this revamping of FEE en Español website, which Javi has been doing an awesome job. Javi Saavedra. Do you have around this? Do you have a different department for the Spanish website, translation-wise? I don't know, publishing-wise?
Yeah, I think that's my role in that has been pretty minimal. A lot of my content goes there, and I've done some things to help promote. But Javi basically is the man on that front, and he kind of takes the lead on getting FEE's articles translated and published, and really just finding out these whole new audiences in Latin America that we didn't have before. And the growth for FEE in Espanol has been, I think, beyond anybody's wildest dreams. So it's one of the things we're really excited about and really, really proud of. But I can't take much credit for that beyond just the fact that some of my articles go on that website.
Great. So far, I know it has not been so long, but so far, what would you say is your greatest achievement, and maybe what are you most proud of in your time at Fee?
Oh, that's a good question. There's been a few things I've been really pleased with. Personally for me, I've been able to get published in a lot more publications. My byline is appearing in a lot more things, and I'm very happy with that. I think my writing quality, keeps, getting better. It's always I'm going to look back in 5 years and cringe at some of the things I'm writing now, and that's sort of just the nature of it. But I do think we've been able to take this issue of the lockdowns, and really make that Fee was ahead of the curve on that, right? Everybody was looking at what was happening, trying to figure out what's going on. And pretty early on, we put our flag in the ground and said, this is wrong. We're imprisoning people in their houses. These lockdowns are going to be very harmful. We got to think beyond, the fear of the moment. And we've had great success on that front. We've really been able to reach a lot of people, and I think to help shape the narrative there. And I'm really proud of that. One piece alone on Fee that we published was read, more than 2 million times.
Awesome.
Just on our site, so when you're reaching that many people, with one article or 2 articles or 3 articles, you feel like, yeah, we're having an impact here. We're having an impact. We're starting to reach beyond more than maybe just economists and libertarians and things like that. More mainstream mentions and all of that's important. We really believe in our principles. We think our principles can help guide us through these times right now. We want to be part of the conversation, and we're doing a job of growing our audience and being part of that. And 2020 has been a challenge on so many fronts, but for Fee, it's been great. I feel like we have more energy and more opportunity than we've ever had before.
John, that's very impressive. And do you recall the name of that article so we can share it in the details below?
Yeah, it's basically, let me pull it up.
Sure. Yeah, because but by the end of the talk, I'm gonna ask a little question about how do you use your time, which news sources do you use, what do you read, what do you listen to, but the goal is to share information with people that they can access on the web, and they can adopt new media sources, change their perspective, leave the echo chamber, maybe listen to different point of views and perspectives. And I would love to share this article with our
Yeah, I have it here. This one, it's NPR : mounting evidence suggests COVID not as deadly as thought. Did the experts fail again? And basically, we know COVID-19 is a deadly disease, and it's a horrible, virus. We nobody likes it, but if you look, it's not as deadly as we had originally feared, and that I think has been overlooked. We took these drastic actions because we believe this might have a infection fatality rate of 3-4%. And we're finding out now it's much lower than that. Some say 0.23, 0.26, maybe 2.4, 0.5. But the fact is, it's not as deadly as we'd feared. But we took these actions that are going to have sweeping consequences that are going to lead to tens and tens of million more people in extreme poverty, and all these other consequences that we might not see for even decades. But we know that social isolation is deadly. There's there's really no scientific debate about that. And this article just broke that down, and it said, I kind of opened up with the Iraq War, right? We went into Iraq a number of years ago thinking that we're going to find nuclear weapons and everything wasn't there. And the experts really failed on that front. The politicians, the bureaucrats, the media, they all failed. And I think we're going to look back at this pandemic in the same way. The data we had wasn't good. The reaction was too severe. And it's going to result in consequences that are far worse than the actual pandemic itself, which I think we're seeing now. Like, if you look at nations that locked down versus nations that didn't lock down, it's kind of hard to see much of a difference in these approaches.
Yeah, these are at the same time important but very thorny issues. Because there's a lot to say, go in favor and against, for instance, media. And I do recall that newspapers such as the New York Times, they were the ones peddling the war. And now they pretend they didn't lie. Now they pretend they didn't have any responsibility in that. And they're the ones again and again. For instance, they're the ones selling the lockdowns right now and going against the scientists that speak against lockdowns. It's a huge issue by itself. We wouldn't be able to talk all about it. And I'll just say that last month I took a minute of my time and chose to sign the Great Barrington Declaration. What are your thoughts on the Great Barrington Declaration?
I was very excited to see that come out. And, there were some things where they were trying to smear the people, that were putting it together. Google was trying to black it out for a while. But if you look, these aren't cranks on here. These are some of the leading, scientists in the world. And, very impressive resumes from people at Harvard and all these other Ivy League schools. They cannot be dismissed that easily. But I think that's sort of what we've seen, so often today is they just want to dismiss people at cranks who reach conclusions that are different than their own. And to me, that's incredibly arrogant. It bothers me that we instead of having a discussion on these issues, so often they just want to dismiss people as tinfoil hat, conspiracy theorists. If you doubt any of their data, and their data should be doubted. They've been wrong about so many of these predictions, and not just a little wrong, astronomically wrong. And we need more people questioning. But I think one of the reasons people don't question is they're afraid they're going to get attacked as not being part of the club. And I was going to say this earlier when we were talking. I think if there's a virtue missing in our culture right now, I think it's just courage. We need more people that are going to not be worried about what other people are going to think, not being worried if it's going to maybe hurt their job, career opportunities later on, but just to be speak truth and to have the courage to say no, we think this doesn't work or we think this is wrong. But I think there is a culture of fear. And they have people kind of afraid to speak out on a lot of these things. This year, it's as you said before, been pretty tough. So many things have changed. I don't say that all has changed. Everything has changed. That's a lie. I mean, you cannot talk in absolute like many people did at the beginning of the pandemic. That everything's new, everything's changed, all is different now, new normal. I don't buy that. I mean, I call it BS. But I do recall that when I was in college, I had classes on media, classes on communication, journalism, politics, economics. And one of the few things that struck me hardest was when I learned that media, such as the New York Times, the Washington Post, they partook in the lie, selling the lie, the false flag event of the Tonkin Bay event in Vietnam, which started the war, the Vietnam War. And digging, I mean, they have been pushing war and pushing this kind of, I don't know, even beyond draconian answers to world affairs. Even before that, I mean, the Walter Duranty affair from the New York Times in the 1930s, defending the Soviet Union and
giving him the Pulitzer Prize, not recalling it, and all the way to the Iraq War, and right now with lockdowns. If I was a skeptic, if I was somewhat doubtful about the quality of the information, I mean, 2020 is just dragging them into the gutter. I mean, I just last week, I mean, the New York Times to me is now Pravda 1, and the Washington Post is Pravda 2, and it's not just because of this year. It's a long time, it's a long history of failing and pushing propaganda and calling for war that sadly people tend to forget pretty quickly.
Yeah, I find it the most alarming thing in our society today. You know, like the people with the most power have the least responsibility, and often seem to have just an aversion to the truth. And you know, we can disagree on some of these things. Like, you know, the world can be tricky, right? Getting at the truth can be tricky. I think you can go back, you know, Iraq. Did people believe, you know, Saddam had weapons? I think I think it was a screw up, but I think, did they believe it? Yeah. But there's a larger issue you're getting at here. And I think you're right. I was going to bring up Durante myself. You know, I watched Mr. Smith, the movie. If you haven't watched it yet, is outstanding on the man who basically Durante smeared as a liar for exposing the truth about what was happening in the Ukraine. And it's a very chilling thing to watch, because not only did he get away with it, he got Durante, he got awarded with a Pulitzer Prize for this. And today the same thing keeps happening. Like, people are getting rewarded for things that aren't really true. Like the 1619 Project is the latest one. You know, Pulitzer Prize winning journalism that was flawed from its inception, and they're tweaking parts of it, removing parts, denying that things were removed. It is very troubling, and you know, I think this gets beyond econ a little bit, but it was something that occurred to me not long ago, and said, you know, if philosophically, if you reject that truth exists, you might have a hard time, you know, telling the truth. And, you know, going back to parts of, you know, postmodern philosophy, there's been a strong, you know, tendency in Western culture to kind of reject the idea that any sort of hard, you know, that truth exists. So if you have that philosophy, I think there will be repercussions for truth in the future. If you actually believe that there is no such thing as truth.
And that takes me back to the comments you were making about Jordan Peterson. And I recall I read a couple of weeks ago, I guess, Dan Sanchez, your very own Dan Sanchez at FEE, written about, I guess the title was How Jordan Peterson's Advice Saved His Own Life. And I guess that's why they belittle and malign him so much, because he's saying things that work and that we know are true. Maybe he's not so original in the sense that he's going back to history and religion and philosophy to convey in a new fashion or to a new audience the old teachings of our civilizations, and those outstanding long-term truths are so despised by the postmodern left. I guess it was Joe Rogan in his podcast that called that. He said something along the lines that I had never seen a person so smeared in my life as Jordan Peterson has been, by media, by newspapers, by so-called journalists. And the issue I see is not just about the person that they're going about, a single person at a time, is that they're going against the ideas, not just the people. What do you think about it?
That's interesting you bring this up. I actually, just shortly before I call, I talked with Dan Sanchez, who you mentioned, who wrote that article. And I mentioned to him I was working on a piece on Peterson as well. And this came up, like, why are people so hostile to Peterson? And I watched some videos, and people are clearly hostile to him. And it's Dan's theory I thought was very good, that people internally, they feel threatened by Peterson, by his message, maybe sort of convicted by it. I think that's definitely a possibility. I think some of it just goes back to Peterson's just taking us back to early Western philosophy in many cases, right? The Stoics and Aristotle, like what is a good life, and finding meaning in responsibility. These aren't radically new ideas. Now Peterson presents them very effectively and defends them very well. I think that's why he has so much appeal. But those ideas now are looked at as imperialist or colonialist or part of some sort of like those ideas themselves that are hostile today to people. And I think that's kind of I find that kind of scary. Like these are just ancient ideas that we've been questions we've been asking for a long time. They're the foundation of the society we live in. That they're a key component of that society. And we forget we live in a pretty good place. We live in a very healthy place. We have so much, but I think it's the nature to take that for granted. And so Peterson's just taking us back and saying, no, these ideas matter. Responsibility matters. Own your life. Take responsibility. And that is being met with this sort of hostile chorus of people that don't want to hear it.
One of the messages I try to convey when teaching my classes to young students, college students, is that I want them to place themselves. Imagine they are in Mexico City in the 1700s, and also guess how life was in the same period of time. I don't know, maybe let's say Minnesota or somewhere in the 13 colonies. And they have their ideas. They say, oh, I don't know. I can see the Spaniards and I can see the priests. And then I try to refocus them to say, now realize that Mexico City was way richer than any of the 13 colonies at this time. You had nicer weather. You didn't have, the 6 inches of snow. You had agriculture. You had some trade. You had gold. You had these resources. But then there was a shift. Then then things changed, and one country began to grow a lot and kept growing, and the other one kept on going into war, civil war, revolutions, coup d'etat, and all these kind of military coups. And now, can you see the results? And I try to teach them that it's not about this person or this family or this bad guy and the worst dude that became the dictator. It's always about the ideas. Because public opinion, it's gonna allow the dictator to only go so far or so long, and they just kind of shut down, just keep quiet, and there's no real comeback to that. And those ideas that we know that don't work in Mexico, they don't work in Colombia. They don't work in Argentina. It's a world history lesson of what not to do in a country in politics, in economics, and finance. Mexico as well. And I guess that's why they're going after the crown of liberty and constitutional freedom right now in the U.S. They just did that to Chile in South America. They just did that to Chile. They did that before Chile. They did that to Venezuela, which was the richest per capita country in Latin America. Before that, in the 50s and 60s, they did that to Cuba, which was the most prosperous society in Latin America at the time. They just keep toppling down the highest achiever, and in a sense, trying to get into the idea of attacking people like Peterson and trying to switch into the 2020 elections. It's not about a person. It's not about just a group of people. It's about a way of life. What do you think about that?
Oh, I mean, a lot to unpack there, but I think you're right. What we're seeing over and over again are these ideas in infiltrating countries, and whether it's Venezuela or Cuba, or Chile. The results speak for themselves, but it's a very stubborn idea, socialism, and especially when you have an intellectual class that is embedded and loyal to that idea. They're very good at selling, the simple idea that some people have more than other people, and that's not right. That should be yours. And why don't I have more? They're preying on the very base emotions that go back. You can go read the ancient, philosophers or scriptures or wherever you go. These are just basic vices that humans have. We envy things. We covet things. We want, what other people have. And socialists are good at saying, no, that belongs to you. And they have these sort of very fancy formulas and philosophies that, on labor, why you should have, why labor should have more in capital. The people putting money up shouldn't. To me, it's very empty. I think if he's right, you don't have, our ideas are very simple. You can't take what's not yours. Doesn't matter what you want to do with it, right? It doesn't. We all. I've been teaching this lesson to my children recently, and just saying, like they're trying to understand why other people would want to take our stuff and give it to others. And I said, well, they want to do really good things with it, and they say it's going to do all these things, but you just got to look and say, no, you don't have a right to things that aren't yours. Yeah. And it's a very simple message, and it's the right message. But it's not as seductive as the politician who says, no, we're going to take from these people, and we're going to, hand it out to others. And it's going to be, they promise utopia with it, right? They promise all the wonderful things that they're going to do. So it's not surprising that country after country after country slips into socialism, whether it's rapid or very slow, right? That's the question, whether it can be, Venezuela, it kind of, even Venezuela there were stages, before Chavez where they were kind of creeping there. And the United States today, where, parts of the United States economy are very socialistic and parts of it are not. And then you run into the argument, well, if the government itself doesn't control the means of production, is it really socialist and things like that? The fact of the matter is we're seeing freedom curtailed in all these places, and economic freedom is in the decline, and we got to continue to fight that fight and make the case for why our ideas lead to a more prosperous and peaceful society, and they clearly do.
So besides which sites or news sources did you try to keep up to be well informed? What do you read? What do you listen to? Podcasts, newspapers, whatever.
Yeah, NPR and New York Times are still good news sources. If you stay off their opinion pages, you're generally going to do okay. Although there's been some bleeding of a lot of opinion into the journalism itself. I blush to admit I get so much stuff now directly from my social media channel. I will say, certain individuals I really enjoy reading. I used to have two people who couldn't be more different in some ways. Charles Krauthammer and Christopher Hitchens were two of my favorites for years that I'd go out of my way to read. Well, they're both dead now. Glenn Greenwald is a guy I really enjoy to go read, who is recently of The Intercept, the founder there, but now is not. Matt Taibbi is another guy. Andrew Sullivan, I enjoy to read. I still kind of seek out some of his commentary, although Andrew can be, he can have takes that I very much disagree with. And those are kind of more of the more progressive thinkers. It'd be a longer list if I kind of rattled off some of the conservative thinkers. I will say, like Nick Gillespie at Reason's a guy I read a lot. And there's some others. I think there's kind of a vacuum right now for those thinkers. We mentioned Peterson. I think he's a guy, that I really like to go out and hear, but I don't see as many of the intellectual giants right now as I did for a long time. That great voice that you seek out to kind of help show, clarify maybe some of your own thoughts that you've internalized. But that'll change. There's a good, both the libertarian space, the conservative space, there are a good number of up and coming writers and thinkers who are pretty impressive.
Fantastic. And I'm always trying to learn more about books and authors, and also recommend them in their channel. Maybe a couple books, 2 or 3 books that you will recommend that you read lately.
Let's see. Right, I've been kind of on a fiction kick because it's Halloween.
That's good.
I will say this: like a friend of mine was asking me, I'm a book nut and I like to recommend books. Alexander Hamilton by Ron Chernow is one of the best biographies I've ever read. I'm blanking a little bit. I know there's a few other things that. How about you? First, you pitch me an idea. I'll think of something as we talk here.
Well, last night I began reading Charles Cox's Good Prophet. More into the business side, more into the management side, and I was reading. I'm about to finish Barry Brownstein's, Professor Brownstein's, The Inner Work for Success, which is more into the leadership and management stuff.
Barry is a personal friend. I love him. He's a very good writer. One book I was trying to Talk of the Devil is a book written by. I just finished it. Riccardo. I'm forgetting his name, so I'm looking it up. And basically, the book is it's a journalist who interviewed 7 living dictators, tyrants. Some of the guys like Idi Amin, Duvalier in Haiti, Milosevic. He personally interviewed a lot of these people. Here it is: Talk of the Devil: Encounters with 7 Dictators. Written by Riccardo Orizio. And a friend recommended that book to me. And it is so good because they're shorter stories and interviews, but it's unique in that he personally sat down with all of these dictators and spoke to them. And you kind of learn something by listening to them. They all kind of approach the world in the same way. They all felt very cheated. They all felt like, they were all narcissists, like you could see that. But they all rose to these positions of power. So I really did enjoy reading that. I always like to give people Henry Hazlitt's book, Economics in One Lesson, if you're into economics. Thomas Sowell's book, Basic Economics, is one of my favorites. I read that one years ago and still use it as a resource. It's on my desk here. When I just want to, explain maybe a complex idea in very simple language, Sowell did that better than just about anyone. Kind of simplifying economics and then sharing good stories that kind of showed them in practice.
Yeah, I just finished this short essay by Sowell about the myth of the trickle-down economics, and I gotta go back to basic economics because I never finished it. I reread the first part. I don't know how many times, but I never finished the whole book from cover to cover, which I should. And I would like to thank John. It's been a great talk. Great to make a new friend, get to know you, share this. Hope to have a record of what your career has been at this point, some of your ideas, some of your work. And I hope we can keep on talking, carry on, and be friends for a long time.
I appreciate the invitation, Rodrigo. I'm humbled you asked, and I enjoyed, just sitting down and talking about, some of the things we covered. We covered a lot of ground, but I enjoyed the conversation.
That's fantastic. So I know you're a busy guy, and you're a tight group, tight staff. Thanks a lot, and have a great day.
All right, you too. Take care.